Hello iCracked fans, we're going to go over replacing the Digitizer on an iPad mini. As you can see, this one's pretty badly broken. One of the first things we want to do is check all the functions of the device to make sure that everything is operating normal before we open it up. So we'll go ahead and press the power button and the screen should come up or turn on. Swipe to display, Digitizer working. The first thing we're going to do is plug into the charging port. Make sure that we get the lightning symbol, the battery should turn green, and we're currently at 19%. We want to make sure it comes up at least 1% so that we know that the device is actually charging. Go over here, connect to a Wi-Fi network, make sure you're pulling a good signal. And then open up Safari and make sure the device is actually pulling down data. Okay, so we know that's working. We're going to test our volume up, volume down, and the mute. Going to go ahead and open the camera. We'll check the rear camera, front camera, and then we'll record a small test video to ensure that the microphone is working. Test 1, 2. Go ahead and play that back. Test 1, 2. So now I know the loudspeaker's working and the microphone is working. Lastly, I'm going to grab an icon till they get shaky and then move that icon all over the screen to make sure I don't have any dead spots. If the icon drops on its own, that could indicate there's other problems besides a broken Digitizer. But if the screen is broken bad enough, it will drop in that cracked area. Double tap our home button and make sure that works. We're going to close any open applications before we power it down. Our batteries come up to 20%, so I know for a fact that it is charging. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the charger and power the device down. Let's go ahead and inspect the contents of the kit we received. So this is the iCracked iPad mini do-it-yourself Digitizer repair kit. Let's go ahead and open this up. Included is a nice protective sleeve, a pair of nitrile gloves. This will help prevent your fingers from getting cut from the glass and prevent you from placing fingerprints on your LCD. You have a small magnet to place all your screws on so they don't get lost, a tool kit, some adhesive remover pads, some alcohol pads, a iSesmo metal opening tool, and a couple of guitar picks. Underneath, you're going to find your replacement Digitizer. I'm just going to go ahead and inspect this, make sure there's no damage or cracks. Some other items not included in the kit that you're going to need is something like a hot air gun to heat the Digitizer to loosen the adhesive to remove it. We highly recommend a pair of safety goggles because this is very thin glass and lifting it has a potential of shattering, in which you don't want to get any of that into your eyes. You may also need a pair of tweezers. Now that I have all my tools and equipment and I'm satisfied with what was included in my kit, we'll go ahead and get started on this repair. Now before we start heating the glass, let's get some of our equipment together. We want to take all our guitar picks. I want to go ahead and open up the tool kit that's included in your DIY kit. You're going to need the nylon spudger and the suction cup. And the possibility you're going to need your iSesmo. I try to open it without the iSesmo first because there is the chance that using a metal tool on a metal frame could leave marks or scratches. So let's go ahead and put on our gloves to protect our hands. Now, using the hot air gun, I'm going to circumnavigate the Digitizer I want to get the glass up to about 100 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. When that's enough, the adhesive underneath will loosen, and then I can take my suction cup, place it on the screen, and start prying up a corner. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my hot air gun. Now if you have any holes in your digitizer, you don't want to blast it with hot air because it'll ruin the LCD underneath the digitizer. Now while you're heating this, you want to make sure that you have something underneath to protect. You don't want to blast any furnitures or countertop, anything with this hot air. The air coming out of here is over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and this tip gets extremely hot. Don't let it touch your hand or your skin. It will burn you. So let's go ahead and continue heating. Now what I'm doing is I'm touching the glass, and I know I'm hit the right temperature when I can barely keep my hand on there. So now that it's hot enough, I'm going to place a suction cup on here, and I'm going to gently lift. Just like that, just enough so that the glass comes up. Now if your digitizer is badly cracked, you're going to have a hard time doing this. Or if it starts cooling down, it's also going to fight you, so you may have to heat it up even more. Now you can try from either top corner, either the top right or top left. Okay, I'm going to have to heat it up a little more. It cools down pretty quick, so you're going to constantly be applying heat. Okay, now that I have it lifted enough to get my plastic spudger in here, I'm going to go ahead and start coming around and lifting. And you see this glass is very, very thin. It's very, very brittle. Now that I have a slight opening in here, I can use my Sesmo and get in here and start removing this glass. The biggest thing you don't want to do is you don't want to pry your tool in against your LCD because you'll scratch the LCD. You see I'm just barely going underneath the glass here without touching my LCD, so I'm keeping it at an upward angle against the digitizer itself. Now if it starts coming out in little pieces, that's normal. It's going to happen like this. So I'm going to gently start lifting the glass up and open it toward the bottom of the device. Just like that. See, there's not a whole lot of adhesive down the sides here. I'm going to continue removing this glass here. Now that I have this open, you don't want to hit any more heat here because you will damage the liquid crystal display right here. Now on the underside of the digitizer, you're going to find two magnets that are located at the top and bottom of the Digitizer. You want to save these magnets because they'll have to be transferred to your new Digitizer. These magnets are used for holding the smart cover, or any cover you put over it that's smart cover enabled. So make sure those don't get lost. One of the things I use is an X-Acto blade with the number 17 blade on it, so I can get in here and very gently get underneath, loosen up and lift my adhesive. See, just like that. As long as you grab the adhesive, the most of the glass is going to come right up on you. If some of the little glass pieces get on the LCD, don't worry. We'll use a fine brush, something like a paintbrush that has never been used on any product before, to gently brush that off. The biggest thing you want to do is whatever tool you're using to get up the glass, you want to make sure that you don't slip and hit the LCD, because it will scratch and damage it. You see, I'm being very cautious here. Bringing up the glass in just itty bitty little pieces. That's good. Now at the bottom edge where the Digitizer comes in, you're going to have a cable here. So this goes underneath the LCD and connects to the logic board itself. I'm going to very carefully keep removing as much of this adhesive as possible and the old glass. Now located at the bottom also is your GPS and your Wi-Fi antenna, so you don't want to damage or slice those. I'm going to go ahead and pull my home button bracket out. We're going to save that. This part here, you don't want to be in a hurry. You really want to take your time and gently peel off the glass and adhesive. If you don't have the razor, the iSesmo tool will also work to gently rub this stuff off. Okay, once I get around this edge, what I like to do is take a piece of paper or the foam that came with it and lay the Digitizer on it so that none of the adhesive under the Digitizer gets transferred to my display. I'm going to keep pulling as much glass off as possible here. You see at the bottom edge, here's the second magnet attached to the glass, and again we're going to save that because we have to transfer it over. Now that I have as much glass and adhesive as possible, I'm going to go ahead and brush off the LCD of anything that has fallen on it. Okay, now that my work here is clean, I'm going to proceed. Now, you notice we had the guitar picks, but we didn't use them earlier because the screen came off pretty easy. But in the event that the screen's not coming up easy, you can slide the guitar pick in there and bring it out, or leave it in there so it doesn't re-stick until it's fully opened up. So now the Digitizer is completely opened. We're going to have to disconnect the pull the LCD out of the frame. Now on the LCD itself, on the right side, you're going to see some foams covering the screws. So I'm going to go ahead and very gently peel off this foam. And then I'm going to attach it to the inside of the digitizer so it doesn't get lost. So here's the top one up by the rear camera, and I'm going to do the same thing and stick it to the inside of my digitizer. Now, using the number 0 Phillips screwdriver, I'm going to remove the 4 screws on the LCD on each corner. I'm going to lay them on my magnetic mat that was included. Okay, now that the 4 screws are out, there's a few other steps that we have to do. Located down at the bottom edge of the LCD, right here, is a couple of pieces of electromagnetic interference tape that we have to peel back off the LCD. So I'm going to start this off by pulling the 2 upper areas, which kind of look like little rolls. Just like this. And again, I'm going to attach it to the inside of the digitizer so they don't get lost. When you're doing this, you want to be careful not to damage your LCD. Now this is going to expose the tapes that we're going to want to peel back down here at the bottom. As you can see right here are these tapes that we want to gently peel back. Just like that. If you don't have tweezers, you can try going in here with the pointed end of your nylon spudger to peel those off. You always want to go from the center out. So I'm going to go over to this side here. I'm going to get underneath here. This can be very difficult to do. You don't want to scrape or gouge the LCD itself. You could damage it as well. Okay, so now that both of those are peeled back and folded away, now I'm ready to take the LCD and fold it forward. Included in your kit is a 2-foot piece of dental floss. Now the LCD is held onto the thermal plate underneath it with adhesive strips down the side here. So what we're going to do is use this dental floss to saw off and break that adhesive coming all the way down, and then we're going to stop about 2 inches below, because there's components right here on the back side of the LCD that could be damaged by something as simple as dental floss. So one of the first things we want to do is go ahead and thread this dental floss underneath the LCD. Now the LCD is extremely thin and can be very easily fractured or broken if you apply any kind of excessive force on it at all. We want to very, very carefully take the iSesmo and get underneath the corner here, just enough to place the dental floss underneath the corner. This is where tweezers come in real handy. So once I have it under that corner, I can start rolling this in and pulling it toward the opposite corner because we want to get underneath both corners. I got as far as I can, threading it manually. I'm going to do the same thing with the iSesmo over here and very, very gently lift the LCD. There is a lot more adhesive over on this side of the LCD, so this is where you can very easily fracture this. So I got it up, broken up just enough. Now I'm going to take my tweezers here and slide the dental floss underneath. Give it a very gentle pull to get that floss underneath the LCD. And then I'm going to slowly work my way up, well, toward the bottom of the iPad because it's facing away from me now. Then once I get to the last cutout at the bottom here, okay, if you look inside the frame, you'll see a notch right here, and this is where we stop at. Now that we have that enough, then I'm going to take the foam that came in my kit and lay it over the digitizer because I'm going to bring the LCD up and lay it this way. So I'm very gently going to lift this up, just like that, and then lay it across, exposing the thermal plate underneath. Now that the LCD is folded back, we're going to go ahead and remove all the screws for the thermal plate. You're going to have a total of up to 14 screws. All the ones down the side and here are the same size. The two next to the volume, up and down, are the longest out of all of them. So let's go ahead and remove all these screws. Now down the left side of the iPad mini, there's magnets in here that hold the smart cover. So when you're lifting the screws out, they may occasionally jump to that magnet. Just don't touch the magnets with the tip of your screwdriver. It will demagnetize your screwdriver. So when you pull these out, you always want to pull toward the center so that they don't jump off your screwdriver and get stuck to the magnet. This one screw did get stuck to the magnet, so I'm going to reach in and grab it with my tweezers. There we go. Now that all the screws are out, the thermal plate will slide over and very gently lift up, just like that, and remove it. This now gives you access to the internals. If you look right here, this is the retention bracket for the battery, the digitizer, and the LCD. So we want to go ahead and remove the 3 screws. Now that those are removed, let's go ahead and remove the bracket just by lifting it out. The first thing we want to do is disconnect the battery. Now, the inside of the battery connector, this side, has several surface mount components which can be easily damaged. So we always want to disconnect from the battery side using the flat end of your nylon spudger just pop it up and fold it back out of your way. Next, we're going to do the LCD connector, which is located right there. Same thing, we're going to come in with the flat end of our nylon spudger, lift it up to disconnect, and then go ahead and set our LCD in a safe place so nothing gets dropped or damaged. The last thing is the Digitizer connector here, as well as the control board. Once again, you're going to take the flat end of your nylon spudger, disconnect the Digitizer, and then you're going to take the flat end and slide it up underneath the control board here and disconnect it from the inside of the frame. There is a little bit of adhesive holding it in place. Just like that. If the adhesive stays inside, that's fine. You see this end here came off with it, so I'm going to go ahead and peel that off and place it back inside the frame so it doesn't get lost. Just like that. Now I can take my old Digitizer and set it aside. Remember, we're not throwing it away yet because it has the foam strips that we're going to have to put back, and I just set them there for a safe place. Now that the LCD and the Digitizer is removed, we're going to go ahead and clean up all the old adhesive off the frame. To do so, we use one of the pads that were included called adhesive tape removal pad. We'll go ahead and open that up. Now these pads can be a bit wet or moist, so I'll just dab it on a tissue to remove any excess moisture. And then I'll go ahead and fold the pad in quarters. I'm going to run this all along the frame where the adhesive is. Let it sit for a few minutes so it breaks down that adhesive. Now, you want to keep the fluid off the internals. You don't want to spill it on the front camera or the rear camera. We're going to make 2 complete revolutions of the frame so that the fluid gets on the old adhesive and soaks it up really well. Then go ahead and dispose of it. You're going to let this sit for about 2 to 3 minutes and start breaking down the adhesive. Once it starts breaking down, you can use the flat end of your nylon spudger to kind of push the adhesive around, just like that, and pull the adhesive off right on the tissue. Or you can use that same X-Acto blade with the number 17 tip and come through and perform the same function. Anytime you use the metal tools, you have to be very careful. You don't want to slip off and gouge the logic board. It could make it irreparably damaged. And you don't want to run it on the outside upper end of the lip because it'll scratch and mar the frame. The key is to get as much of the old adhesive and glass shards as possible. Try to get the inside edge of the frame as clean as possible. The cleaner you have it, the better the new Digitizer is going to go ahead and grab and hold the frame. As you see, the adhesive comes off relatively easy once we've put that pad on. I'm not using any real force. I'm just enough here to pull the adhesive up and grab it. Just like that. Once you're satisfied that the frame is clean enough, we're going to go ahead and take the 2 alcohol prep pads that were included and wipe off all that fluid. Now that all the adhesive has been removed, I'm going to go ahead and clean up the frame one last bit with these alcohol pads, wiping up any of the fluid and leftover adhesive that's still stuck to the frame. Now the alcohol will evaporate pretty quick. I'm not too worried about if any of it accidentally drips inside. It will evaporate. Same thing as I'm making going around the frame twice. I'm going to take the second pad, and once again, once this alcohol has evaporated, I'm going to apply it one more time. Now that the frame's nice and clean, we're going to transfer a few components, the magnets, over to the new Digitizer and go ahead and get the Digitizer, LCD, and everything else put right back in. Now if you look at the new Digitizer with the adhesive, you're going to see a little tab up in the upper area where one magnet goes, and down on the lower and right here where the second magnet goes, right there. So to place the magnets, let's go ahead and peel off that adhesive backing here at the bottom, just like that, so it comes out with just a little piece. Now the magnet that has the black tape on it is the magnet that is at the bottom of the Digitizer. Now you want to make sure that the magnet corner is matched the corner of the adhesive on the inside edges. If the magnet is too far out, it's going to hit your frame and it's not going to set in there correctly. So let's go ahead and place this magnet here in, just like that. Then I'm going to go up to the upper piece, and the same thing, it's going to have a little tab. I'm going to go ahead and peel that off. Just like that. And then I'm going to take the magnet that has no tape and place it up at the top. The same thing. If you look here, it's going to lay exactly how the adhesive is. You want to get it lined up on the inside edge and press it into your adhesive. Now that my two magnets are installed, okay, the upper magnet, the lower magnet, my Digitizer is ready to be installed. So I'm going to take the frame, just like this, and I'm going to take the new Digitizer and I'm going to connect it to the logic board. Now when you're doing this, you may take you a few times to line it up. You don't want to apply any pressure whatsoever on the connector. You want to make sure that it naturally falls into place. So this can take a few times to make sure you're lined up and placed in the correct place. When it does fit in, you'll feel it double snap down, just like that. Now that the Digitizer is connected, I'm going to make sure the control board is placed inside the frame. And then I'm going to take my LCD display and I'm going to perform the same thing. I'm going to come in here and notice how I'm holding the LCD slide at an angle, get it lined up and placed in there. This again may take you a few times to properly align it. You don't want to force the connection. The end of the ribbon here is very flexible, and if you bend or bow it, then it's not going to sit on the connector correctly. Once you have the LCD connected, again, you're going to feel that double snap, and then we'll go ahead and lay the battery connector back down. We're going to take the retaining bracket that we removed earlier and place it back in place. You're going to make sure the long end points toward the top of the iPad. Line it up on here and put your 3 screws back into place. Now that my bracket is back in place, we're going to take the thermal plate, place it back inside the frame, and again, it's going to go on the right edge and then drop down. The little cutaway here for the volume is this ends here. Lay it down into place like that. Now we're going to go ahead and place all the screws back in the thermal plate. So I'm going to start off with the 2 very long screws located next to the volume up and volume down. Line them up and get the thread started. And we're not going to completely screw these down yet. We're going to do that once all the screws are in place. That way we know that the thermal plate is aligned correctly. You really want to pay attention to the corners that the LCD passes through on the upper end. Now, down the left side where all the magnets are, just be kind of careful because the magnets have a tendency to grab your screws. If you're having a problem in this area, I'd suggest using tweezers to drop the screws into place. Again, I'm not tightening these all the way down. I'm just putting them in enough so that the threads are started. In the event your screwdriver gets demagnetized, you can take a refrigerator magnet or any kind of magnet and rub the shank here, and that will transfer the magnetism back over to the screwdriver so that you can pick up the screws again. Okay, once all the screws are in, we're going to verify that my corners are aligned correctly, and then go ahead and tighten all the screws down. You don't want to over tighten these because you're going right into the aluminum frame. You can end up stripping out the screw hole. So you just tighten it enough till the screw stops. You don't need to go any further. Okay, go ahead and turn it back around. We're going to lay the LCD back into place, just like that. LCD drop down. You notice the LCD flex cable here makes a natural bend. That's normal. And this your digitizer cable. Once you have that back in, let's go ahead and place the 4 LCD screws between the LCD and the frame. Be careful with your screwdriver, you don't want it to slip off and hit your LCD, as it will scratch it. Again, we're not over tightening the screws, we're just putting them in until they stop. Okay, now that the LCD is placed back in, we're going to go ahead and fold the adhesive off for the EMI tapes and lay them back down onto the LCD down here at the bottom, just like so. And then I'm going to take those two long strips that we peeled off and place them back onto the base of the LCD. And then the two foam pieces that we peeled off the LCD screw, the longer, wider strip, it goes all the way up at the top right, and then the smaller triangular looking one will go down at the bottom right. Now that the LCD is screwed back down, we're not going to close this yet. We want to go ahead and power up the unit and test it. Let's go ahead and power it on, and we'll let it boot to the dash. Okay, now that it's powered up, we want to make sure that everything on it functions. Make sure the digitizer works. We want to make sure the sleep and wake works, because that is actually controlled by the home button flex cable, which is attached down at the lower end of the digitizer. Make sure our home button is working. And then we're going to do the same thing earlier. Grab an icon, move it around the screen, and make sure that it doesn't drop off. Make sure it goes across the page and back. I'm going to test fit the digitizer, make sure it drops into the frame. If any of the corners are damaged and you try to put the digitizer back in, it's going to crack the digitizer, so we want to make sure that the corners are free of any dents. You want to make sure that all the edges are clean of any dust, dirt, or remaining glass. This one here looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and power it down and complete the installation by closing up the device. Okay, now that it's powered down after testing it, I'm going to go ahead and gently lift the digitizer over. One thing you never want to do is pull on the digitizer cable. It can become very easily ripped, which is located right here. See, it has free movement. Now, one of the first things you want to do is make sure that the LCD is nice and clean, brushing off any dust or dirt. If you see any fingerprint smudges, you can use a lint-free tissue with a 50-50 mixture of distilled water and alcohol, or use a lens pen sidekick, which is sold in our iCracked store, which has a small carbon brush here that removes fingerprints and dust and dirt and oil off the LCD. It's pretty safe to use, and it's really good at cleaning TVs and computers. Now, what we're going to start off doing is we're going to remove all the adhesive backing from around the digitizer, with the exception of the area located directly below the digitizer cable right here. Make sure you leave this piece on. The reason being is this flex cable will get caught on the adhesive, and when you go to close it, it's not going to sit correctly, and you could pinch or damage this cable. So we'll show you how to close this up correctly without getting this cable stuck to the adhesive. I'm going to start off by removing all the backing up at the top. And now I'm going to remove this last piece here just below the home button. And again, I left the single piece right there. Now the inside of the Digitizer also has a clear film off it. We want to make sure that it's free of any dust and dirt, as we don't want it to fold onto our LCD. Check our LCD, make sure it's completely clean. And then we'll go ahead and remove this inner layer just like that. I'm going to take the Digitizer and I'm going to fold it up, and I'm going to match the two top corners in the frame just like that. And notice I'm holding the bottom of it lifted, as I don't want it to stick. So once I have the top down, then I'm going to remove that last piece of adhesive, just like that. And I'm going to take the flat end of my nylon spudger and I'm going to very gently push the cable in, just like that. It's hard to see here. Okay, there we go. So it should be curved inside. You can see the cable here, curved inside just like that. So what we're going to do is curve it in and then slowly close down. See, my nylon spudger is still in there holding that. Then when I get down to the bottom, then I'm going to push down in the glass and pull the spudger out at the same time, just like that. It's a one quick smooth motion, and you see the glass should drop right inside the frame. If the glass is raised above the frame, then you didn't get it seated correctly. And then I'll pull off the outer layer here. As you can see, the glass sits nicely just below the frame, like that. Go ahead and peel that off, and once again, we're going to turn it on and test every function of the device like we did when we first opened it up. So let's go ahead and power it up. Now that iPad is powered up, I'm going to once again plug in my charger, check my battery. I'm currently at 19%. You see I have the green battery and I have the lightning port indicated it's charging. I'm going to once again check the cameras. I'm going to check my rear camera, my front camera, and record a video again to ensure that the microphone's working and no adhesive or glue is blocking it. Test 1, 2. Go ahead and play that back. 1, 2. Make sure volume up, volume down goes, and that you hear the sound out of the loudspeaker. I'll go ahead and delete the video. Press your home button. Camera app should close and go back to the main screen. Make sure we have good Wi-Fi signal. Open up Safari and make sure that we're actually pulling data. There we go. So we know we didn't damage the Wi-Fi cable or the Bluetooth. We're going to once again grab an icon until they're bouncy. We're going to grab that icon and we're going to move it all over the screen, just like such. If the icon drops, that could be an indication of a damaged Digitizer flex cable or improper connection. Now that I'm satisfied that the Digitizer is working 100%, I'm going to once again close any open applications I have. I'm going to wait till my battery comes up at least 1%. It's still currently at 19%. Okay, now that the battery has come up to 20%, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the charger and power down the device. Once the device is powered down, then we're going to go ahead and seal the Digitizer into the frame. The preferred method is go ahead and take your heat gun and warm up the glass. You don't, to where the adhesive is nice and gummy. Lay the Digitizer down onto a towel and put about 5 to 10 pounds of books and let that sit for about 4 to 6 hours before using it. That gives the adhesive a chance to grab onto the frame and hold. And the reason why we heat it is so that the adhesive becomes even more loose and has a better chance of grabbing. If you don't heat it, then you're going to want to extend your time to at least 12 to 24 hours of the pressure to keep the Digitizer inside the frame. Thank you. Have a good day.